it's working. So good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm very happy to be telling a little bit about my experience. So it's actually this year, 20 years since I joined my first TCC. Back then, still in Berlin. Back then, when it was still 2,000 people, and I think there are quite a bit more these days. So I definitely went through my technical parts, but a few years ago, I discovered that where my actual talents lie are more in the structuring of information. So this is why I'm now more working as a manager these days. And I try to put that information into a presentation, and I have 25 minutes, so it will be dense. But I'm hoping that I will not lose too many of you this early on in the morning. A quick disclaimer, these views here are my own, not the ones of my employer. I'm not a doctor, so everything that goes towards health is not that I'm like an official person that could give you that advice. And the pictures that I've referenced here, not all of them, I would or can completely endorse the people behind. Some of them are really just really cool pictures, but I try to make sure that I reference really the people that helped me the most as well in my journey. So let's dive in. I mean, the 8-bit days. It's like a lot of fun. When we were talking about the topic, it was like, okay, that's in the 80s. We were playing those games, and that's how we all got to computers. I did. Playing games, doing music, or not music yet on the computer, but doing writing and writing stories, taking the thing apart, stacking it back together, trying to. And but the thing what I wanted to focus on today is that a lot has changed since we all started. And I think we all got into IT security because we were curious. We wanted to understand how that works. That at least was my driver, and it always still is. So what has changed since then? I think most of you know that picture, Moore's Law, and how the transistors amounts of changed over all of the years. Back then, when I did do my IT apprenticeship, I still had to learn the transistors per CPU areas. There was like an easy multiple choice question. That's at least what my teacher thought. I'm glad that we're not doing this anymore, I hope. What you can see is things have changed. And with the amount of transistors, the speed has changed of stuff that we're taking in, the information, the amount that we're taking in and consuming every day. What has also changed is the vulnerabilities. Some of you might have seen that study, but if you see the CVEs that got published, and this is only starting in 2000, and so not in the 80s, because back then they didn't have that yet. But so over all of the time, how many CVEs we have per year these days. So you can pretty much amount the criticality that we have behind. And then we have some nice things like ransomware, which of course makes everything even more driven and risky. And it's pretty much one of the key drivers that each one of us has at work to keep up to date, to try to push the rest of the company to go and patch their systems and do the incident response. So what has it all led to? In my opinion, burnout. Burnout of many of us, because we came in for the technology, we came in for the fascination to understand stuff, and we're suddenly confronted with people. We're confronted with people who don't want to do what we want them to do. And we're like, what the fuck? How can we make those people do what we want them to do? And it's a lot about communication, but it's also what I learned a lot about centering back on yourself. Because suddenly, it's not about, it's more than you focus on the other person, the more you start to lose yourself. And I assume that many of you also turned to technology because I did, because it was easy. You didn't have to focus on the emotional part, on the people part. And it was just so much easier to focus on the logical stuff. It's one of the reasons why I only turned manager now, because I just wanted to focus on the logical stuff. So, I mean, even Gartner created a study. I mean, I think it's a shame that they only focused on the cybersecurity leaders, because I think it pretty much fits for most of us. But yes, burnout is a topic, and it has arrived in the main field. And we are important and really key employees, and the future is with us. So the only thing that we need to make sure is that we remain resilient and that we can sustain our own life force while doing the stuff that we love. So this is what the rest of the presentation is about. Because I asked myself, what would I've wanted to do differently? What would I've liked to know earlier on? And what is also knowledge that I try to teach my people or coach my people when I guide them? And I mapped it to another framework that most of you might know from the 8-bit days, the ISA-OSI model. And so we're going to go through that, because what I've seen is, if you pretty much, like, the layers are pretty useful still. And I would say, like, the below layers are like the self, where you focus on yourself, and it's pretty much the emotional state of yourself. And the top layers are like more on the company level, so what you're doing for outside, and the logical. And the orientation is pretty much what I, as a manager, want to give my people. So if I have an employee coming to me and they're like frustrated with a situation that they have at a customer, frustrated with a situation that they have with somebody else, what I automatically become aware of, and I don't focus on this like at first, at least not down here at first, but it's pretty much, this is just the foundation that needs to be set correct, so everyone can focus on the rest. And I'm going to go into the details on why that is. But I think it's critical that we all remain creative, and that we come up with creative solutions, and we can only do that once we feel stable and safe, and once we understand what can destabilize us, and we know what our priorities and what our own needs are. And only when we can do that, we can learn to understand how we can reach our goals. We understand the intentions of the people around us, the expectations that others have at us, and the expectations at your current task, so you can reach your next steps. So let's dive in. This is a topic that I've only in the past year started to dive into myself, and I'm mind blown about the impact it has. So it's about the nervous system and how it works in our body. And some of you might have heard about parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system states. And so the sympathetic nervous system state is pretty much when we're active. So right now I'm pumped with adrenaline because I'm nervous. But what also happens is there's quite a few other things that happen in our body. So we have not relaxed, like how our breathing system is going. We're starting to become tense in our system. We have like certain things that are suddenly produced in our body, like excessive other hormones, for example. And when we want to slow down, when we want to calm down, we go into parasympathetic nervous system states. So the heartbeats become slower, so there it is either faster, and it also even impacts like our whole digestion. So everyone who has like stomach problems, or sometimes I had that under pressure, that I stopped hearing. I start to hear like a high sound, stuff like that. So if you have such effects happening to you, that's usually your nervous system that's starting to respond to you, and you usually don't notice it. And so what is happening is your body gets into an active state, into a response state. And most of you hopefully have heard about the fight, flight, and freeze responses. So the fight is, of course, you get those outbursts of emotions. You want to fight something. You get defensive, as an example. You have an unclear and aggressive voice, for example. And the tendency to flee, the next one, is when you want to like move to the next topic. You can't really focus. You can't finish the task at hand. You want to move to the next. You're always like on the run and go. That's dysregulation, because you're not in the center and you're not active focused on what is like right now in front of you. And another thing that I have learned in childhood very easily was freeze state. And the freeze state is stuff like you go blank. There's someone attacking you and you can't respond. There's stuff like you want to listen, but you can't remember what is told. So somebody's telling you that you agreed on that. Well, you can't remember. It's just gone from your memory. And it actually can happen that you get into a freeze state for years and years. Some of us stay in it for most of our lives, just because it's something that we learned early on in childhood, that our emotions are too much, that we are not allowed to live our emotions, feel our emotions, and we learn to push them away. And the problem with that is all of those states take us away from creativity. And what we need more than anything else is creativity right now. So I definitely encourage everyone to learn about that. There's a lot of amazing resources. I personally like Irene Lyon because she also has like a lot of stuff on YouTube and like with free worksheets, but it's just the foundation to actually get you in a state where you can look forward and stuff. The next thing that was really surprising to me is foods. Because, I mean, I remember the days when I could still drink Club Mate, and I pretty much rolled on that. And I definitely, most of my bachelor thesis was written while listening to, like, lots of fast music and Club Mate. But the problem with that is that what had happened with me was, because I've been open about it always, I had a burnout 8 years ago, and I'm pretty good after it. But what happens is it's adrenal fatigue, because with every little bit of caffeine you take in, you stimulate your adrenal glands. And so they need to release cortisol. That's what's happening. So you stimulate your body to produce extra hormones, and at one stage it gets exhausted. And the problem is, some of you might never reach that state. I did reach it, and it started to have an impact on me that I got anxiety from it. So these days when I drink caffeine, I get anxiety from it. And we have so many people with depression these days, and I don't think many people understand the correlation that depression can actually be caused by what you eat. So the nutritions are really, really important. And one other thing, like one of the key measures that I took was I changed my eating habits. And so I was like the one that was after lunch still having a Snickers and like loved my a chocolate that usually someone took to workplace. I tried to change that, and I focused that I eat as much fiber as possible. So that might be beans, might be high, like full fiber grains, stuff like that. But these things have such a high impact, and I'm mentioning it here because it's not talked about enough, in my opinion. Because one thing that can happen when you have those spikes all the time is insulin resistance. And we all sit in front of the computer too much anyway. So we are like on a roll towards all of those future problems just because we have this work situation. And so you might not have the effects now, and I can't promise you that you will have them eventually, but it's good to have this in the back of your head. So if you ever have a thing, you can go back to, yes, there was something. And there's something you can do about it now. So we're jumping to the network layer, the packets. Like, how do you structure information? And what is like something that I try to teach also is like understand your own needs and priorities. And everyone that knows me knows that I love and really love the moving motivator cards. The moving motivator cards are like a A4 sheet that you can print and like cut out. And it's pretty much the 10 internal moving motivators. And you can like order them and like find out for yourself what it is that is a priority for you. And for me, while I was in tech and like on the tech level, it was always driven by curiosity and by mastery. But there are people who are more driven by acceptance, by status, by relatedness, by power, by freedom, or by honor. These are all different things, and they are all valid. There's no right or wrong, but understanding that somebody else has a different driver can help you in translating on like why something can be like more helpful and like how you can relate to that person and include them in the way that is helpful for them. And for me, for example, this is why when I have people who are driven by curiosity, I'm not going to give them by default extra pay. Because what I know is what they more are like striving on are interesting projects. They want to like learn on the job. They want to have creative work where they can like really fulfill themselves. The money is just a secondary thing to them. They most likely will use the money to get extra learning in if they can't do it on the job. So I always need to see how it is possible, but understanding what is actually driving my other person is helpful for me to understand as a manager. And I think it's helpful for everyone to know about themselves as well. And the other thing is the nonviolent communication thing. So that's not just like, you're an asshole. And the better version is not like, I think you're an asshole. But it's more like, because you did do this and this, it made me feel like I wasn't at place here. And that makes me feel uncomfortable, and therefore I don't want to do this. So this is hard because that's vulnerability. That's like emotional vulnerability. And there's a great book by Brené Brown, Dare to Lead, that is a lot about how managers can be more vulnerable without being seen as just like simple to push over or easy, because that's still like a state that many managers out there think that vulnerability actually is. But it takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable. And I would like to see more people being actually honest and communicate what they actually feel, because we're coming to that on the next level. I think I put it on, I know it's the next level after that, but it is about understanding the needs behind what is going on. And so I'm going to jump now into the segmentation. That is still really important to tackling the big problems. What was very helpful for me was the Pomodoro technique. I don't think I would have made it through my bachelor thesis and most of my studying pretty much without the Pomodoro technique. And yes, the 25 minutes were too little for me. I usually had like 90-minute sessions because you can't get any code done in 25 minutes. That's at least what I felt like. But I set those limits to 90 minutes and I took a 15 minutes break. And like having those breaks, do something different. Like for me, it was playing the piano, because switching the side of the brain was actually something that made me go back easier into it. And like learning and knowing about that it's just like doing something else that occupies a different part of your brain can help you to afterwards go even deeper. And I wasn't aware of that before, but it helped me to go through those really hard times that I had. And the other thing that really was helpful for me was to think like a programmer, which pretty much is just like an example on how you structure not only code, but like any problem that you tackle. Like, how do you structure it? How do you approach it? And start with the easiest first, then go around, like take the most complex part of the code first, because it has the most dependencies. And I mean, when I was an architect, that still was true, because it's all about understanding the requirements, the connections, and so you can build the solution that is fit for everyone. So, yeah, both of those were like key for me and helping me in the past years. So now we're coming to the one that I was mentioning before, the Harvard concept. The Harvard concept, or Harvard method, is a method about deal making in theory. And it is about that you shouldn't focus on what the position is that somebody is holding, but what the need is behind the position that they're holding. Because there usually is always a solution. And the question is just, can you understand what the need is behind that they try to fulfill? Because usually people are very defensive, they're emotional, and I mean, when we have the layers, when they're emotional, down here, they're not stable. You can't argue with them on a logical basis, you just can't reach them. And so, what you need to create is understand the need behind, fulfill that need, what gives them the safety, so they can feel like they are included, and then you can come to logical agreement, because you before made those decision criteria on what you actually want to reach, how do you measure your success, and then you can come to a logical step and an agreement with them. So in my experience, I've pretty much done this naturally over the past 10 years, and it has helped me greatly, and I can just recommend this concept to everyone. It's a very thin book. I think even the wiki page reading that will be helpful for everyone, because it's really about understanding what is the need behind that makes the difference, and that can help you then bring the solutions and make the other person fucking patch that hole. And it's it's understanding what the problem is behind always. The next thing that I thought was very interesting to me about understanding other people's needs is the 16 personalities. I don't know, how many of you know those? Can you? Thank you. Very good. So the main message behind it is everything or everyone has a different kind of personality, and that's totally okay, because they have the things that they're good at. And I had a mentor that told me about 10 years ago, you should only go into management when you like people. And I took that dearly. And what you learn with this methodology is really to understand the strengths of each and every one. And when you focus on their strengths and you make them live those strengths, you give them confidence, you make them want to work more, you make them more passionate about things, and you can better analyze on what is the team that you have and where you're going. So understanding those different types of skills and passions and interests and things that they have is key, just to get this capacity and understanding okay, yes, this is actually a decent person. We don't align on everything. And yes, they're not doing what I want them to do, but they have their values, and that's valid as well, because they focus, and those values were gained based on their experience that they had. So every opinion is valid, because you probably might have turned out the same if you were in their shoes. On the presentation layer, it's understanding the expectations for your role. And there you have the key things between understanding your manager. So what is your manager trying to reach? Why is he giving you the task? What are their preferred ways to communicate? What is, how do they respond to things? How can they deal right now? Is my manager overloaded themselves and just can't make this other decision because it would be too much? Is it helpful if I come with solutions and they just pick at one? And I think it's always important that a manager can give you your priorities, but I'm always glad when someone comes to me with different solutions and I can pick which one. So this is helpful for me, and sometimes your manager just might be under the dreads themselves. And so this can always be helpful to just understand. And also, it's funny, but seeing authority figures, I had a hard time with managers for a very long time. And understanding that I have this, that I challenge them, that I want them to be in this idealistic way that I have for myself, but of course they couldn't because they had their own experiences, and they respecting that as well. That was a path for me to learn as well. But so I think it's very interesting, and just being aware of this, that we all are in this together. But the key is to successful work experience, that you make your relationship work with as many as possible, and especially the key people, because everything else will drain you eventually, because you will feel lonely and separated from the rest, frustrated with the world, and it will come towards depression likely. And when you get into that state, life just is less fun. So let's keep it at that, and there's many more things that I could say about it. And so the last thing, the last level, is really understanding the tasks that you are at. What is your current task? Do you understand what is the purpose of the task that you're doing? What are the needs? And yes, that means for me, as a manager, that I explain the context of why we're going that direction. That I tell you what my parameters are, what are the guidelines that we need to respect to be able to reach that goal. But it's makes everyone in the team so much more passionate about it afterwards, because they understand where things are going. And if I've learned one thing is that if someone has a meaning on why they're going away, then they actually know why they get up in the morning. They know when they look into a mirror that they're confident and happy with themselves because they know what they contribute. And everyone that can contribute feels a bit more like they're a person of worth. And I think that is very important. So, and if there's one last thing, and I'm now really at the end of the presentation, it's always stay curious. Follow your joy. Follow what brings you the joy. And in my experience, it brings you also to the place where you belong. And yes, I wish you a wonderful B-Sides Munich. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. Have a great day. And that was in time.
Desiree, thank you so much for the amazing presentation. It's been a long, you see, the human intelligence is getting a little tired.
Yeah.
Now, before I say something, I would want to ask in the audience, do you have any questions for Desiree?
Everyone needs coffee now.
So then I would go ahead. So as you mentioned, or touch bases in your keynote, and you mentioned that human intelligence,
yes.
I would like to quote it as human intelligence. Now, this has been affecting a lot lately. Yes. Now, during the previous years, let's say, for example, 8-bit era, from there today, today's date, let's say, where the cyber threats are evolving crazily. Every other day, there's crazy stuff. And the stress levels are increasing. They're going beyond, leaps and beyond.
Yep.
Now, from this particular perspective, how do you think, how would the emotional intelligence come into place? Like our emotions, feeling, conscious mind. How do you feel how do we hack it that it doesn't give away to these vulnerabilities easily?
So I do think it has the biggest impact on how we do the work. Because what I've learned is that, you always have the work itself, and if the work, achieving that goal feels like a struggle because you're fighting internally with yourself, with something else on your mind, and I do think that, we will always have things in our private life that will have an impact. Might be a health condition of someone we love, might be our own health condition, might be a move that is happening, might be like a project that you want to get done on the side. And so what I've learned is that it's hard to be fully focused on the topics. And the more you can be fully focused on one topic, the easier it becomes for you. And the more you feel like you're doing the right thing and you're actually, it satisfies you what you're doing, the more fulfilled you feel. So it's not about, it probably will just make things get to you faster. You will have done the work faster. So for example, what I had to learn about myself is that when I try to force creativity, I'm the worst, but it comes naturally to me when I get enough space, when I get enough free time and I get enough relaxed state. So my ideas usually come at night. I wake up in the middle of the night and then I know what to do. So is the OC model thing here, the references to that was a 3 a.m. thing for me. And it's I can't come to that on a forceful manner or with a flip chart and brainstorming or whatever. But so these are things that come easy to me because I learned my way on how to get there. And not everyone has the same way to get to the solutions, but learning your own way on how to get there and get there in an easier way is just making you feel like work is less work, it's more fun. And I think that is what I at least try to achieve. I don't want to work hard so it feels like work hard, but I'm just doing the work because I'm passionate for it and because I love what I do. And so I sleep in a different quality at night, and I have a better relaxation because of that, and I can share that the fascination as well better with people because I'm personally convinced about it.
That's fantastic. So basically, we do need to dwell, or like you mentioned in your keynote as well, stand in front of a mirror and try to identify what path suits you the best.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
Yes.
Thank you for the talk. Connecting passion, you said in the network layer that people have different motivations. Some are passionate, some are interested in projects. Connecting network with data layer, the skills that people have with the motivation that they have. Do you have any tips there?
So you might not always be able to bring align with everything and every opinion that somebody has. So I think the key is always just to find that one thing that you share, that one value that you share. And there have been people that I had fallouts with, but I value and love the way that they treat their employees. And so I have a lot of respect for that person. And I think it's always key to keep the respect for another person, to treat them respectfully, because they notice that. Everyone notices if they're actually appreciated and treated for the way they are. And I remember when I started out in IT, I had to gain the respect. And I felt like I had to jump heights to just get first time running the firewall rules on the active in the production system was they treated me like this was now a high achievement. I'm well, the work was done before that. It pressing that one button wasn't the difference. But getting to that respect level where they would allow me to do that felt like work already. And I don't think that's fair because everyone should be deserving that respect for the experience that they have. So always find that small thing that you have in common and go from there. So I think that's and one of the things that I just learned in my coaching, I've worked with business coaches now for 6 years. So I have those trainings as well on myself. And one thing is really if you see that there's no common thing that you can get to, try to shadow them, copy them, see where they are going, understand the way that they think. That's one of the things that I'm now focusing on. What is their belief system that they have behind? Because many people are just caught in their belief system. And that's actually, that's the thing where you start to hack the universe. But it's like understanding where those beliefs come from. And like when you understand those needs behind, you can perhaps have a bit more understanding on why they are and acting the way that they are. And then it's again the Harvard concept. It's about going to those needs and making sure that those needs that they have behind are met. And sometimes it might just be for the network engineers, let me come up with something, that they don't want to have more extensive patching times. And what you like require from them would mean, like in the way that they think that you say it, that they would like have to work all weekends and not just like in this 2-hour shift that they have. So if you like make them understand that this is not the goal that you try to reach and your intention is just this and this, and let us find different solutions and what are actually the criteria to reach that, then you can come up with a better solution. And it hopefully isn't that they need to like work 24 hours on a weekend. Did that help you? Cool.
Thank you. Any further questions? Anyone? Yes.
You had a burnout. You mentioned before that you had a burnout.
Yes.
When you came back, did you encounter any difficulties coming back? And
Yes.
how did you deal with that?
So what was the biggest change was my sleep. Like during the burnout, I was on 2 hours per night that I could sleep still. And after being in that state for 2 weeks, that's when I actually went to the doctor and said like, okay, I need some help. But, what I had to do was drastically become aware of what are my priorities. So for me, it was decluttering that I did do. A lot of like trying to do less, like trying to become realistic of what I can actually do with my time, what would actually be my priority. And what was the hardest thing for me that I'm learned only now years after actually making a genetic analysis on what are my predispositions. So I learned I have this genetic key, the COMT gene, which is pretty much making you slower, build down adrenaline and cortisol. So that means that when I drink something with caffeine, it has even a higher impact than it has on normal people. And so this is why I now have like adopted all of my eating habits and drinking habits to that. But like, getting out of that state, because it just meant that as soon as I got excited about something, I slept or I couldn't sleep for hours after that. And then when I learned that I'm sensitive to that, I now have like my repository of supplements that I can take in addition to that. So I'm an advocate for taking magnesium before you sleep, or I have like glycine powder that helps by me personally to like come into a more calm state in the evening. And these are just easy things that I can do, but it's things that are very custom to me, and I had to learn that. And one of the things that I also had to learn is like build up resilience with workouts. Workouts are an easy way to just like, and you start with that like a HIIT workout. You start slowly, but it helps you build a resilience, like more tolerance to stress, because this way, when you get into a stressful state, you do have the tolerance and you can like recover from it more easy than afterwards. Stop. Cool.
Any other question? So then I would like to say one thing and also contribute to what she's saying here to us is, in case, and I hope nobody of you suffers from this or has ever experienced this, that would be the best scenario. But in case, and if you would like to share or discuss or get some guidance, Desiree is right here. We now have a break for about 20 minutes and we kick off for the conference. So you can approach directly to her. She's here with us. And I thank you all so much and wish you a wonderful conference for today. And Desiree, thank you so much for this amazing talk.
You're welcome.